Welcome you to the Ferris Network on television. Now 20 days, or exactly from right now, 500 hours from the election. That is an eternity in politics. There is so much that can and will happen between now and then. Live pictures of former President Trump's rally in Atlanta. It's his third event of the day across two different states. Take his remarks as they begin. Speaking of Georgia, democracy is working in the Peach State. A record 250,000 people today voted. It's the first day of early voting that reportedly went off without a hitch. Also tonight, Kamala Harris continued her targeting of black voters, especially black men, in an interview with Charlemagne the God.
What's your stance on reparations?
First of all, on the point of reparations, it has to be studied. There's no question about that. And I've been very clear about that position.
Her answer sounds a lot like something she hits Trump for all the time. A concept of a plan. And that's the big criticism of Kamala Harris now 3 weeks out, is there still are no plans. More on the interview in a moment, including her plan to reach black voters. But first tonight, Democratic panic, which is real, versus Republican cockiness, which is also real. Kamala Harris is clearly running like she's a couple of points down. And she's going into some very unsafe spaces to deal with it. Maybe she doesn't have a choice, but she's agreed to an interview with Fox News and possibly Joe Rogan, a popular podcaster with men, a group heavily supporting Donald Trump. Then there is Donald Trump. Today he appeared, fair to say, defensive when discussing his economic policy at an event in Chicago with Bloomberg.
People like the Wall Street Journal, who's hardly a communist organization,
yeah, but you don't know.
They have criticized you on this as well. You are running up enormous debts.
What does the Wall Street Journal know? I'm meeting with them tomorrow. What does the Wall Street Journal know? They've been wrong about everything. So have you, by the way. You've been wrong about everything.
You're trying to turn this.
You've been wrong about it.
You're trying to turn this into debate.
It's not a debate. No, but you're wrong. You've been wrong. You've been wrong all your life on this stuff.
Well, can't say Donald Trump doesn't enjoy mixing it up. The crowd loved it and warmed up to Donald Trump, to be fair, over a couple of hours. Also, the interview by Bloomberg. Hard for Kamala Harris now to say that Donald Trump is hiding. And Donald Trump is slightly more disciplined, at least he was last night in the beginning of his town hall. That happens when he is up in the polls. The Real Clear Politics average shows he is in a much better spot against Harris than he was at this point in 2020 or in 2016, especially in the swing states. But the polling was wrong in 2016 and in 2020. It overestimated support for both Clinton and Biden. It's very possible the polls could be wrong in favor of Trump this time around. We just don't know. Our friend Eric Erickson pointed out all of the things looking good for Donald Trump. 60% of Americans think the country is headed in the wrong direction. More voters are calling themselves Republicans than Democrats for the first time in 3 decades. More Americans think Trump's last term benefited them more than the Biden-Harris administration benefits them now. So he should be 10 points up, but he's not. The race right now is tied. There's no other way to say it. And that is a serious problem if you're Donald Trump and the Republicans. Trump doesn't seem that worried. Just watch what happened at his rally last night after 2 people suffered medical emergencies.
We have incredible people. They come here hours before, and it's a little hot. And so they're with us all the way. Let's not do any more questions. Let's just listen to music. Let's make it into a music. Who the hell wants to hear questions, right?
This is a man's world.
It went on for about 40 minutes. We'll see if there's a sing-along at tonight's rally. The left tried to spin his impromptu music session into signs of dementia. It's certainly not that. But it is, shall we say, a slightly different way to run a political campaign 3 weeks from Election Day. Day after day, we see articles claiming Democrats are panicking about the election. In his latest Talking Points memo, Bill O'Reilly pointed out that some of those fears may be unfounded.
So even though the Democrats are panicking, underestimating their machine would be foolish. They have more than $1 billion. So the Democratic machine can do what it wants, but it does have a weak candidate.
And Democrats maybe are panicking, but maybe it's better to be a little panicked instead of overly confident. We begin with Bill O'Reilly tonight, host of the No Spin News on BillO'Reilly.com. His new book is on the New York Times bestseller list for the 4th week in a row. It's called Confronting the President's No Spin Assessments from Washington to Biden. Bill, good to see you as always. Big interview for Kamala Harris tomorrow. She's going on Fox. I think reasonable people can agree that she wouldn't be doing that if her campaign thought she was 5 points up and everything was fine. Her campaign and Democrats are spinning it as her reaching out to Republicans, to moderate Republicans, to make the case that she sort of has nothing to lose. How big is her risk if she bombs?
It's a big risk because candidate Harris has not articulated any problem-solving solutions specifically. She's dodged questions on the border, questions about inflation. She blames Trump for everything. But it's a bigger risk for the interviewer, Bret Baier. So here's the irony of this. The exact same thing happened to me in 2008. Exactly the same.
We have the clip. Should we play it?
Right. Not yet. Let me set it up.
Not yet.
Because this is so eerie. It's so eerie. It's so strange. So September 2008, Senator Obama, running against Senator John McCain. Obama was flat. And McCain, who had just put the governor of Alaska on his second ticket, who was popular, he had momentum. So I get a call, come to York, Pennsylvania tomorrow, and Senator Obama will talk to you. And we've been trying to get him for 6 months. He told me he would do it, and he was a man of his word. So I went and I did the interview. But keep this in mind. Barack Obama is 1,000 times more articulate than Kamala Harris. And he sat with me, and he did himself a lot of good. You can roll that tape.
It is unacceptable for Iran to possess a nuclear weapon. It would be a game changer. And I've said that repeatedly. I've also said I would never take a military option off the table.
But would you prepare for one?
Well, listen.
That's the question, though, Senator. Anybody can say option. Would you prepare for it?
Look, it is not appropriate for somebody who is one of two people who could be the president of the United States to start tipping their hand in terms of what their plans might be with respect to Iran.
So does that mean if Bret Baier has a lot to lose or more to lose tomorrow that Obama got the best of you?
Look, Bret Baier loses 1 million viewers when he comes on the air at 6 o'clock from the show in front of him, The Five. He loses 1 million viewers every night. He is a good journalist. I have known him forever, but he's not an opinion journalist. And on cable TV, people tune in for opinions. That's what they tune in for. Now, you have to do some hard news, but it's very tough for the hard news people to compete in the ratings with the opinion people. Okay. Now, Trump has already said that Baier's soft. I don't think that's true. But Baier is going to have to do exactly what I did there when I said, are you preparing a scenario to disarm Iran on a nuclear level? And he kind of dodged. And I said, no, there's a difference. Are you preparing? That's what Baier's got to do. He's not a confrontational man. There's not going to be any of those shootouts like there were with me. But he's going to have to say, I asked A, and you didn't answer. Would you like another chance at it, Madam Vice President? Always polite. But if he just goes there and let her wander into, I was brought up in a middle-class home, and the border is Trump's fault, If he allows that, he's putting his career on the line. Because FNC people, and this is going to go all over the place, are going to be furious.
Yeah, let's get off of Fox for a minute. If we think about where the race is and where it goes forward, there's this question about whether or not there are undecided voters. I make the case that there is. Others make the case that there is not. There is no question that Donald Trump is seeing a significant rise in the polls. Joy Reid, who's opposite us on MSNBC, explained it this way. Take a listen.
Entrepreneurial Republican pollsters can certainly gain favor with Trump, who's apparently fuming about Vice President Harris's billion-dollar fundraising and positive press. And then there's the more sinister explanation that if Trump, Republican pollsters, and even jittery Democrats convince enough people that his victory is inevitable, how much easier would it be to claim that the election was stolen if he loses?
I guess that's setting up to be sore losers. I don't really understand. But the question remains the same. How confident are you in the polling?
Not confident at all. I was wrong in 2022 on the red wave. I thought it would happen because of the unbelievable inflation that Americans were experiencing, and it did not happen. So I was wrong. So I did an interesting thing today, Leland. I invited your sister, a PhD who teaches at Washington University in St. Louis, fine school. I invited your sister on the No Spin News because she's a brilliant woman, smarter than you by far, and she had picked the last two presidential races accurately. So she came on and she picked Trump to win. I thought that was very interesting. I don't have a lot of confidence in I haven't predicted. My opinion is that Trump is leading by about 2 points and that Kamala Harris is not going to get anywhere near 81 million votes that Joe Biden got. If she cracks 70, she's going to be lucky. But I just don't know about Donald Trump in the last 3 weeks, about how he's going to present himself. And that always holds people back. But look, this country is in bad shape. And if the liberals
agree, but
hold on, that's their problem.
And you can make the argument also that there's a lot more bad things that can happen in the next 3 weeks for Kamala Harris than that can happen for Donald Trump, because almost all the bad stuff about Donald Trump is baked in one way or another. This is something that I think that people aren't watching and should, which is what's happening in Texas. There seems to be something in the water. Ted Cruz, very closely aligned with Donald Trump, running on the ticket with Donald Trump in Texas. He himself says he is in trouble. Take a listen.
So I'm so appreciative of your viewers going to tedcruz.org, tedcruz.org, and contributing $25, 50, 100, maybe somebody giving 500 or 1,000, but go to tedcruz.org. Please come to tedcruz.org, tedcruz.org. I need your help and support.
Sounds like a MyPillow ad.
Cruz needs a pillow. Texans are tired of him. He'll win, but it's going to be close. But that, I don't have anything to do with Trump.
You don't think that foretells anything bad for... Oh, of course, but you don't think that foretells something in the water in the other swing takes? You don't think that... No, I'm just saying outside of Texas. There doesn't Okay.
I don't know about any water, but I know in Texas that people are tired of Ted Cruz. All right, that's his problem. Now, on a national level... the MAGA people, they are rock solid in support of Trump. But the Harris people are not. All right? They're, again, voting against Trump rather than for her. So that's why, coming back to the interview tomorrow, which is going to be important for Kamala Harris, if miraculously she can turn it around, look into the camera as Barack Obama did, and address direct questions, she'll help herself dramatically. It's not just with Fox News viewers. This will go on social media. It'll be everywhere.
Right, it goes everywhere.
Will watch it. Right. So she can do a lot of good. But if she dances again, I think she's going to hurt herself and not be able to come back. So this is pretty much the last chance for her to gain some momentum.
Well, to shift the momentum, which, as you point out, that's where we're at. Donald Trump does have momentum.
She doesn't have any momentum now. She has no momentum at all. None.
Donald Trump has it.
Right.
100%. All right. Bill, thank you very much. As always, appreciate the kind words about your sister. I will not argue with any of your assessments. No spin indeed, only facts. 3 weeks to the election. Kamala Harris just unveiled new handouts to attract black voters. 3 weeks out, she's having problems with black male voters. Why she waited so long? Live pictures of former President Trump's rally in Atlanta, Georgia, a city where the black community makes up nearly 50% of the voting population. DDHQ forecast shows Trump with a 63% chance of winning the state of Georgia as of today. This comes as he continues to gain momentum with black voters, especially young black male voters. In her latest attempt, and we're just 3 weeks out, Kamala Harris is now rolling out a slew of new policy proposals to try and connect with black male voters. She just wrapped up an hour-long interview with Charlemagne the God, trying to drive a wedge between black men and Donald Trump. Take a listen.
Our church and my church is about saying true leadership. The measure of that is based on who you lift up. And and then he's selling $60 Bibles or tennis shoes. Mm-hmm. And trying to play people as though that makes him more understanding of the black community. Come on.
With us now, Christopher Towler, director of the Black Voter Project, fellow at the Center for Race, Immigration, and Social Justice at Sacramento State. Good to see you, sir. Thank you for joining us. We appreciate it. We found you through Roland Martin, who we did a segment about black male voter support for Kamala Harris on Friday, and he took me to task. So take a listen to what he had to say.
First of all, Leland, everything you just laid out in the last 5.5 minutes is absolutely wrong.
I just want to be clear. You don't think Kamala Harris has a problem with losing black male support?
No!
So then why is Barack Obama out there talking about it? All right. Do you agree, Mr. Towler, that Kamala Harris does not have a problem with support among black males?
I absolutely agree with that. Everything that I've done looking specifically at the black community and running nonpartisan academic polls that poll over 2,000 black people at once shows that she has not lost any traction with the black community or black men since she's taken over the nomination. She's actually gained traction within the black community over Biden. Her numbers are better than Biden's numbers were with black men in particular since she's became the nominee and taken over the ticket.
Okay, so I'm just trying to figure this out. The headline mash. In Michigan City, Harris has failed to catch fire with black men. That's the Washington Post, hardly a right-wing news organization. The New York Times, as black voters hesitate on Harris, Democrats race to win them over. Headline, this also from the Wall Street Journal. Harris fights to counter Trump's appeal with black men. And in the past 3 weeks to go, 3 weeks, she has rolled out a massive opportunity agenda for black males. It's now the top of her Twitter account. Marijuana legalization, cryptocurrency protection, health equity focused on black men, forgivable business loans for black entrepreneurs. How that works legally, we're not really sure. Federal incentives for black male educators. Why is she doing all of this if she doesn't have a problem with black men?
From what I've seen, it's twofold. One, her campaign and the news media has gotten wrapped up in these mainstream public opinion polls that have been inaccurately polling black opinion for the last 4, 5, 6 months. You have polls like the New York Times poll, Washington Post, who do national polls of 1,000, maybe 1,500 voters. Within that poll, there's only about 100, 200 of the sample that's black voters. And those aren't representative samples whatsoever. And then you come away with that saying, hey, look, black voters support Trump at 25%, at 26, 30%. When you look at larger polls, black specific polls that have at least 1,000 people, as I mentioned, some of my polls have over 1,600, 2,000 people, you get a more realistic, reliable, and representative picture of the black community, showing Trump support closer to 12%, 13%, 11% among likely voters, right where it was in 2020 and right around sort of the historical average for black support for GOP candidates dating back to the 1970s. And so some of it, I think, has to do with getting wrapped up in this narrative that's been built up the last few months, trying to understand black voters, looking at these small subsamples within these larger polls without focusing in on real specific black focused polls that really take into consideration the nuances and the heterogeneity or the differences within the black community when it comes to things like gender, age, education. You can't do that with just 100, 150 150 people.
No,
right?
look,
you're lucky to even get 100
bigger
people
poll sample. You don't get an argument with me for. You don't get an argument from me. More numbers is always good, and we're always glad to have anybody on who has a divergent opinion. That's what makes this program different and interesting, is to have people on who are coming to talk about these things. So we have been working under a hypothesis, at least this year, that the divides in the American electorate are not necessarily racial anymore, but that they are now based on class, education, and gender. There's starting to be a split, a realignment, if you will, in the voting blocks, and that will completely change the election, because we can all agree if Trump takes 10 or 15% of the black vote in Georgia, North Carolina, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin, this thing's over. Flip side, if Harris preserves, then she's got a much better chance. Joy Reid, MSNBC, has a take on why she thinks, and you dispute her premise, but why she thinks black and Latino men are moving to Donald Trump. Take a listen.
This race will be far too close because, unfortunately, we do have a fascist groundswell in parts of this country, mainly among white men, let's be clear, but in small pockets among black and brown men, too.
Okay, if we replace the MAGA, just MAGA movement with fascist, which is what Joy Reid does every night, is there not a group of young Latino men and young black men who are attracted to Donald Trump and attracted to some of the social values, including that, boys can't play on little girl sports teams?
Absolutely is. There's no denying that sexism and misogyny reaches every corner of America, every racial and ethnic group. But as Joy said, it's small pockets. And the data that I have suggests that it's not larger pockets now than in the past. And those pockets absolutely need to be dealt with. And again, I'll speak specifically for the black community.
Is the Harris campaign calling you and talking to you about this at all? I just find it so fascinating because it's such a counter narrative. No?
Yeah, I've been in touch with so many different people in the media and different campaigns over the last few months, trying to get this data front and center. If I had one critique, it was that the way that Harris is approaching these things didn't happen back in July, and that it wasn't part of Biden's approach from the beginning, right? And I've been studying black politics, doing these surveys for almost a decade now, trying to get black voices front and center, to get the funds, the research, to spend the money to actually collect this type of data so we can see what's really taking place. Because right now, as we've just been discussing, most of these polls can't say anything about the black community, let alone a subset of the black community like black men, right? And so within my data, we've not only shown that black men are no longer more likely to support, but even less likely to run.
We got to run, Chris, but I got to tell you, I really appreciate you coming on. Fascinating data. We'll have you back, and we're going to hopefully get some more of your data to be able to give our viewers before the election. It's good to see you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, Donald Trump takes the stage in Atlanta. Donald Trump's got a huge problem with women. Will a more disciplined Donald Trump, the more disciplined Donald Trump we saw last night, close the gender gap? All right, welcome back. Live pictures of Trump's rally tonight in Atlanta. He taped an all-female town hall tomorrow. Today, it airs tomorrow. Trump struggled with women voters in 2016 and 2020. Those struggles haven't gone away with Harris at the top of the ticket. In fact, they've probably gotten worse. With us now, Scott Traynor, Director of Data Science at Decision Desk HQ. Welcome, welcome. Good to see you. All right, we had somebody on who told us Harris's problem with black voters is not real. Is Trump's problem with women voters real?
Absolutely. Look, the last couple national polls we got, specifically one from New York Times, she had about a 10, 12-point gap or, increase among women than Donald Trump is. And look, in states like Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, about 80% of the voters are white or Caucasian. Figure about half of those are women. So while she's giving it up, and I believe that data, she's giving it up ground among Hispanics and Hispanics and African Americans, she is gaining a little bit among white voters.
All right, gaining a little bit among white voters. And look, it could be white women, white working class women who put her over the top. there seems to be this narrative from the Harris campaign and her supporters, speaking to men, especially white men, be a man enough to support Kamala Harris. Here's one of their ads. Take a listen.
I'm sick of so-called men domineering, belittling, and controlling women just so they can feel more powerful.
That's not how my mama raised me.
I love women. I love women who support their families.
Women who decide not to have families.
Women who take charge.
And I'm man enough to help them win.
Jessica Anderson, president of the Sentinel Action Fund, Dimitri Melhorn, founder of Oakland Corps, an organization dedicated to defending democracy, joins us. Nice to have both of you. Appreciate it. Dimitri, did any of those ads, any of those people speaking seem all that authentic to you?
Well, I'm not the target voter. 90% of the electorate has made up their minds, and so you're looking at those little slivers. You've been asking a lot about the gender gap, all the men who are voting for Trump, all the women who are voting for Harris, and this is an effort by Harris to try to make it about manhood.
You don't seem convinced, Jessica.
I think that ad is very cringe, as the kids say. I didn't love it. I think that it's certainly missing the mark when it comes to trying to pull men and women over to Harris's side. But I think what's really interesting that's happening is more the conversation on the right now, where you have Donald Trump and J.D. Vance really trying to close the gap with women, and specifically on the issue of health. Make America healthy again. It's not for nothing that is this kind of sleeper issue that is moving through and bringing these new female voters with the MAGA moms to the forefront. I mean, this is nutrition, kids, chemicals in our foods, all of this at play.
All right, this is Donald Trump. And for a while, he was really focused on the women's issue. He had some, maybe the kids would call cringe lines in that vein. Here's Trump saying he will be women's protector. Take a listen.
I think women like me because I will be your protector, and I protected you for 4 years. You will be protected, and I will be your protector. Women. Women will be happy, healthy, confident, and free. You will no longer be thinking about abortion.
He hopes that women will no longer be thinking about abortion, I guess. Scott Traynor, 20 days left. I thought Dimitri made an excellent point that you're talking about a very small sliver, if there are any actual undecided voters out there. How many bad things can happen to Donald Trump? How many bad things can happen to Kamala Harris between now and November 5th?
Well, given the news cycles we've been over through the last 2 years, a lot can happen in just an hour, right? I mean, look, we've had.
But can it happen and it actually matter?
That is the good question. Look, I don't think we're going to see any 5 or 6 point swings. That's just not what we're going to see. We might see a half-point swing, maybe a 1 point swing. In all these battleground states, all the margins are within 3 points. So we're not going to see anything big, but the margins are so small, even small swings could mean something.
Let me see if I can get an agreement from both of you guys that this is really much more about turning out the decideds and keeping the decideds decided than it is convincing the undecideds.
I don't agree with that entirely. I do agree with Leland's with the broad question that you were asking about kind of how this is going, but a lot of it is going to be people who are going to vote and have not yet decided which side they hate more. It's at least 3 million out of the 42.
Well, look, to that point, I mean, we're seeing a much more disciplined Donald Trump. We saw that last night. It was a much more likable, it was the charming Donald Trump in his town hall.
I think we're underestimating how unenthused Kamala supporters that may have been supporters of Biden previously that are women are just not excited about Harris. They're just not. And you're seeing it again on this issue of safety and security. When Trump says, I'm going to be your protector, he's talking about, moms wanting safe neighborhoods, moms wanting safe schools for our kids. Harris can't talk about that in a way that actually gets us excited and feels like we can trust her. That's falling flat.
She talked about it in her book, and shockingly enough,
did anyone read it?
24 hours after major charges of plagiarism of a presidential candidate in their book, and nobody's talking about it. So there is that. Thank you both. Sorry, we're going to have to run because we want to make sure we have time for the Trump rally coming up here in a minute. Also this, President Biden just threatened Israel that he will withhold military aid. So just how much power the pro-Hamas wing of the Democratic Party has, clearly a lot when we come back. That's a terrorist group out of Afghanistan, directed an Afghan refugee to carry out a terror attack on Election Day here in the United States. According to the FBI, Nasser Ahmed Tawhid tried to buy AK-47s for the attack. He came to the country on a special immigrant visa during the chaotic withdrawal from Afghanistan. Foreign policy has been the White House's Achilles heel. At this very moment, China is holding drills by air, land, and sea encircling Taiwan, threatening its independence. China is making it clear it's pushing for Taiwan to become part of China. With us now, Admiral James Stavridis, former Supreme Allied Commander of NATO and author of the new book, The Restless Wave. Of all times, The Restless Wave starts at Pearl Harbor before the attacks of December 7th. And I guess, Admiral, that's where we start. There are many in America who believe that we are on perhaps the precipice of World War III because America has never been weaker since World War II. And the world never more dangerous than we are since World War II, as we are right now. Fair assessment or not?
As always, there's good news and bad news. The good news is, despite some challenges, the U.S. military is by far the strongest in the world, highly blooded and experienced. Our defense budget is enormous by comparison to the rest of the world. That's the good news. The bad news is the world is incredibly dangerous between the Middle East, Ukraine, a rising China. Our Navy is too small. We're only 270 ships. China's 350. So we need to up our game and be prepared for the challenges ahead.
Part of being prepared for the challenges ahead is being in a position where when the American president speaks, it has meaning and it carries weight. And you think about President Biden's warnings to Vladimir Putin over Ukraine, don't. Vladimir Putin did. President Biden's warnings to Iran, don't over attacking Israel multiple times, and they did. Now President Biden trying to hold back our ally Israel from attacking Iran in a counterattack. And is it wrong to feel that America's superiority around the world, the unchecked power that when you were Supreme Allied Commander you had behind you, is gone?
It's fair to say that deterrence is composed of two things. Capability, which I just addressed. Our capabilities are enormous, but also credibility. And if we are going to deter our opponents, we need to be forthright, direct, enforce red lines where we establish them, and show that we're willing to push and push hard. In terms of Israel, I do want to make a point. From all I know, and I speak with a variety of people in the Biden administration, they're not holding Israel back from responding against Iran. In fact, they just sent a ballistic missile defense unit that will help if Iran then responds again. What they are doing, and this is an arguable proposition, is saying it would be better not to strike the nuclear facilities. But in terms of an overall response, I think you'll see one very shortly.
No, I think that's fair, that there's been this sort of attempt by the administration to allow Israel to go up to a certain line, although the administration said don't go into Lebanon, and Israel did. We can all agree that there has been this sort of fascination or obsession by the Biden administration of non-escalation rather than Israel just outright winning. And if we think about the way the world works, which is it's a dangerous place, and you said, there's capability and then there's credibility. I'm trying to figure out where, after we had Americans killed in Jordan by Iranian militias, we've had Navy ships take hundreds upon hundreds of missiles from the Iranian-backed Houthis, the United States now threatening to withhold military aid from our ally Israel. I'm wondering how much credibility you think we really have left.
I think we still have significant credibility. And on all of the issues you mentioned, I would personally take the other side and push hard particularly, for example, against the Houthis who are attacking U.S. ships, as you're showing with some video right now. I would also criticize the administration for being slow to need in Ukraine, not getting weapons system forward fast enough. So we can debate whether or not the administration has pushed forward, but let's recognize they have provided significant aid to Ukraine. Smart. They have provided significant aid to Israel, albeit with some caveats. Smart. They are deploying forward against China. Smart. We can debate the tactics. I think pushing forward against all of those risky situations is critical, whoever is in the White House.
Fair enough. I think about what you just brought up, which is China, and China is now encircling Taiwan in their latest naval drills. I wrote in War Notes, the next president will inherit an America less respected or powerful in the world than at any time since World War II. Again, I think the book is important because, number one, it's really good. But number two, I think there's lessons in it that America still needs to look back to, of lessons learned in World War II. And I'm wondering what those are.
That's exactly why I wrote the book. Winston Churchill said correctly, the further into the future you want to look, the more you have to understand the past. I'll give you 3 lessons from World War II that come out in The Restless Wave. One is technology. Exactly as we see the sweeping technological changes on the battlefield in Ukraine, we saw those in early days in World War II. We need to be prepared for that. Number 2, great power conflict is vast and dangerous. We don't have to imagine what a war in the Pacific with China would look like. We fought one with Japan in the 1940s. Second lesson, great power conflict is vast in its scope and sweep. And then third and finally, there's an immutable quality to war. This book, The Restless Wave, is about that greatest generation, about the challenges they faced, the flaws they had themselves, how they overcame those. George Bush, a great American president, a member of that greatest generation, looked back decades later. He said, I was scared, but I was willing. I had barely begun to live when I began to see men die. That is the greatest generation. That's an immutable quality. The question is whether today's America can rise to that level again if we end up in a significant war.
You say if. I think there's a lot of people who don't help but wonder when, just because of how dangerous the world is. Admiral, I really appreciate it. Congratulations on the book, and we always are better for having you on the air.
Look forward to seeing you in person next time. Thanks so much, Leland.
Thanks. He's back. The creepy actor playing a Republican congressman in America's bedrooms returns with a new twist. How his warning for young men might scare them enough to be Democrats. Sometimes one ad can crystallize a race. Think Reagan's Morning in America on television. But these days, voters are seeing ads, well, like this one. End of the rape. Scare folks.
Sorry, you can't use that.
Who are you?
I'm your Republican congressman. Now that we're in charge, we ban Plan B.
No, you can't. You can't do this. I can't have a kid right now.
I won the last election, so it's my decision. Now let's get back in there so we can give her the news, Daddy.
Joe Jacobson, founder of Progress Action Fund. They've effectively demonized Republicans on Obamacare, Medicare reform, abortion, and now this. You got a big smile on your face.
I'm just happy to see you.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go. Does this speak to, if you guys are now clearly focused on young men, how well Donald Trump is doing with young men?
We definitely think that we need to get our message out there more effectively. You know, I'm 30. We see that men under 30 are voting for Trump a little bit more than they used to in the past. So it's pretty clear that men and families want to have a family when they want to have one, not when Republicans are telling them to, since Republicans are trying to ban Plan B.
Okay, just to be clear, Donald Trump, and to be fair, has said unequivocally, as has J.D. Vance, there will be no ban on contraception. That has been a platform of every Republican senator that I know. There's going to be no ban on contraception. Isn't this just a little disingenuous?
I'd be excited for Donald Trump and J.D. Vance to encourage the majority of House Republicans and Senate Republicans to abandon their support for the Life at Conception Act and to stop blocking bills in the House and Senate to make a constitutional right to condoms, Plan B, and birth control. So if they're so for it, they should have their actions.
Hold on. What else do you want? What else do you want other than J.D. Vance and Donald Trump both saying we don't support that, we will not support it, we will not sign it?
Let's get some legislation through. They've killed immigration bills. They've killed health care bills. Let's get some legislation. They need to work on their puppet, Mike Johnson, to actually have him cooperate with Democrats because the American people want health care. They want reproductive freedom. So let's have them push Mike Johnson and Mitch McConnell in the right direction, which they don't want to do.
Okay, well, we'll see if this ad works. Winning gender gap among voters, widening gender gap. Harris leads among women by 16 points. Trump leads among men by 13 points. Where's the ad running? Where do you think it's going to make the most difference?
We're running in all the swing states, in particular Pennsylvania, Arizona, Wisconsin, you name it. We think it's going to especially resonate with young men because, like I mentioned before, I don't want to have kids right now. I'm looking to have a family later. And people who are under 30, anybody who wants a family, they do not want a creepy, weird politician telling them when they can and cannot have a family.
Whenever I see the Republican congressman, I can't help but laugh. You guys have perfectly captured so many here in Washington. Joe, it is good to see you as always. We'll talk before the election, and thanks for coming on with us. It's always fun.
Likewise. See you soon, my man.
All right. See you soon. All right. Quite literally 3 weeks from right now, we are going to be talking about what states Kamala Harris and Donald Trump have won and which states will decide the election. What can change things between now and then tomorrow?